I belong West Virginia, mountain mama, country road, take me home to the place I belong. West Virginia, mama, take me home. So, you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna go through Nietzsche. I know we're gonna talk about the German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, and it's gonna be pretty cool because I have heard about him from cool people. One of them is actually my religion teacher, or was my theology teacher, let's put it like this, an amazingly smart person, and he said that Nietzsche is one of his favorite philosophers, and therefore we're going to go through a summary of his philosophy basically, because there is some very great articles and I'm actually gonna show you there. Oops, no, it's not what I want to do. This is something else, by the Stanford.education site. I might link it down in the description, but I'm probably going to forget about it. But as you can see, there is a few points. I assume that it is very detailed. It, by the way, is the standard Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, but it is very, very, very long. I mean, I could dedicate to it. You know, I could dedicate quite some time to it. It's not that of a big problem. But, I just want to go through a a little bit of a shorter version. It's still going to take me maybe it's actually only going to take me today. It depends on how fast I'm going to be, and depends on how interesting it is and how many thoughts that I'm getting because of it, and how long this fucking intro is going to be. So I'm sorry. But I'm very interested. I'm very, very, very interested in that. So we're just going to go ahead. So it is thephilosophy.com site. So philosophy.com site. Nietzsche philosophy summary, the German philosophers. Are there more German philosophers? I don't actually know. I don't actually know if there are some Austrian philosophers. But yeah, anyway. So Friedrich Nietzsche, a German philosopher. Nietzsche is the philosopher of the will to power, seen as vital creation and fulfillment. What is essentially is our world as it is, joy and desire for power, as for the illusion of ulterior words, Nietzsche stalking in all its forms. Nietzsche, God is dead and nihilism. Nietzsche diagnosed the essence of the mortal crisis of our time. He described it in its main features in an almost clinical manner. He made a study at different levels, and in so doing has often announced with great precision, which only sketched in the late 19th century. The deadly disease of modern times, ours is the nihilism, re-eigen of the absurd or nothing, nihil, as we point out the etymology. I think nihilism is negativity, isn't it? What's going on there? No, go away. Negativity, yeah. Nihilism or no sense. The future is so aimless and all traditional ideas lose their value. But what is the core of this nothing, and how does it spring? The phenomenon of nihilism is fundamentally marked by the death of God, the most important recent event. The sun of the Christian faith has to lie. The darkness is now the lot of our world. The divine, the super sensible, left us. We killed Nietzsche, tells us sometimes. The death of the Christian God, if it is perhaps the sign of the announcement of a new dawn, is marked in our time by the coming of the last man, completion of nihilism. By the coming of the last man, capitalized quite. The last man means what is most contemptible in this world, those who are powerless to create and to love, the individual totally enslaved and enjoying a quote-unquote happiness, programmed and petty. It bounces well on the surface of the earth. Nietzsche, metaphysics and morality. In truth, nihilism completes the metaphysics and concludes there is an immediate consequence. In the crisis of our time, even within the nihilistic disease, we find it in fact errors of metaphysics. Nihilism is the sign of nothing, quote unquote, pure nothingness. It means that unveiling of nothingness conceived as hidden foundation of our world. However, the examination we discover the origins of this crisis within the metaphysical project. Metaphysics defined as the type of research and approach to truth lying beyond phenomenal appearances in other worlds developed because of this our universe. The phenomenon is sensitive, then reduced to a mere appearance, an envelope surface. It slides towards nothingness and reality and identifies the supersensible. Therefore, metaphysics must be overcome. She was born, in fact, suffering from the man and his weariness of life. The individual in his grief has invented another world, stable, permanent place of truth. The object of study of metaphysics is the being in and of itself, essentially the same through the changes. But this is a metaphysical being fiction. It only responds to the need for stability of those that Nietzsche christened the hallucinated, the back world, those that possess or pose an ideal universe beyond the empirical appearances and our phenomenal world. In the eyes of Nietzsche, what matters is, on the contrary, our world as vital fullness. Traditional moral values suffer too, the hammer, quote-unquote, of the Nietzschean critic. Nietzsche is here very hard on Christianity. Yes, resentment is to say the feelings of resentment and bitterness felt by those who are unable to create positive and gave birth to moral values, good and evil. Pain and bitterness are the source of morality as they are the source of metaphysics. Those who can create and say something really positive, in brackets, slaves, to avenge their existential helplessness by making it the negative and value of their lives. Thus was born a Christian ascetic morality, the work of slaves. Nietzsche and the will to power. For the active nihilism destroying traditional values to enter new values. By the way, I do wanna, where is it? Where is the slaves? There it is. I wanna highlight that because it's funny. For the active nihilism destroying traditional values to enter new values by immorality, by placing doctrine is beyond good and evil, we can hope to find a way of the creative life and the will to power. Will to power, that much overused phrase, a term which proliferate major contradiction or sophistry. Do not designate it simply the will or appetite for power, the spirit of domination or competition, ? This would include the design or a very restrictive or destructive domination of a thrust to various aspects. A set of impulses essentially competitive in the quote-unquote poor, but also very movement of creative transcendence. In the noble soul of the aristocrat, a concept taken from Nietzsche in his essentially spiritual significance, that is to say, the best. It can mean struggle for life, but also existential spiritual wholeness and abundance. The will to power is an ambitious term, an ambivalent notion that one cannot reduce its form and manifestations superficial or trivial. In its most noble, it is a strength plastic and creative. To fully grasp its essence, the human body to be taken as a guide, because the body is wisdom and reason, define it as an intelligent, dynamic, organic faculty to understand and to think the whole organism, and it is possible to speak of a mind unconscious body. Following Schopenhauer, Nietzsche rehabilitates the unconscious, conceived as a psychic reality beyond the entry, clear and transparent self. Consciousness is less rich than the body, which provides in its wisdom and starting point and a guide. It puts us in a position to understand the will to power, the deconstructive and creative life force that life in perpetual growth. The world of creative life, Nietzsche and Dionysus. The will to power, authentic as affirmation and fulfillment, unveils within its creative glut or glute the real scope of life and transcendence. Among the creation of life figure, primarily the art where it should not be misunderstood. Any identifies tradition, indeed, the art with works of art and the fine arts. Nietzsche, quite the contrary, creates art in a much more comprehensive and dynamic. Against the quote-unquote art works of art confined to a specific area, bounded and limited, art becomes in Nietzsche an invention of harmonious forms, producing or production for beautification of all existence. It obscures the ugliness, it humanizes or concealing anything that is ugly. Do not confuse the arts and fine arts. All material and science created by an artist, an exhibition, an ideal of beauty does not designate an appendix to this production of what forms of art in general, the intoxication of life, the will to exist through harmonious forms. The scope of the creative life involves artistic activity, the authentic work, and in general, everything concerning the building of positive values. Thus, the real world, formatting things related to joy and pleasure, he differs profoundly from the miserable toil for gain. For the powers of life relate the authentic moral values, those that create the best, the masters, quote-unquote, lying in the lifeblood, of the will to power. Thinking of Nietzsche is aristocratic in the etymological sense of the word, while Herd opposes a beautiful creative individuality. The spiritual opposition between the aristocrat and the flock, quote-unquote, commanded a number of concepts of Nietzsche. Thus, the aristocratic morality, this creative act, this triumphant affirmation of values, an assertion that is in joy, is 1,000 miles from the slave morality. Resentment begets related negative values. The criterion of authenticity is always linked with Nietzsche to the affirmation and the creative power of life. From this perspective, affirmation of the creative power of life, he must understand the symbol of Dionysus, which takes place in such a Nietzsche, The Birth of Tragedy, from 1871, until the willpower posthumous fragments. Dionysus is in fact a symbol of life, be as full of life. God of drunkenness among the Greeks, he plays Nietzsche's thought, the creation and destruction become like incessant. Dionysus is sensuality, enjoyment of power, generating and destroying. The word Dionysian expresses the participation, unleashed, aware of exuberant life. As for the Dionysia, it means the identification with the principle of ecstasy and life. Instead, Apollo, god of the measure and limit, the Greeks refers in Nietzsche anything that is sharp, clear, distinct, limited. At outburst, Dionysian opposed the serenity, Apollinine design as contemplation of a world of imagination and dream. Nietzsche and the Superman. By pushing back the reaction force, a simple denial those related to know, with the access to those of life and creation, man transcends himself towards the Superman, to a higher human type, free, spirited, and heart. The man, indeed, is the end of evolution. He has not completed its root and calls the beautiful creative individuality. The superhuman is the meaning of the earth, the next term of evolution. Again, you should avoid any misunderstanding. The Superman of Nietzsche was sadly caricatured, but it has nothing to do with the blonde beast of Germanic, myth. The philosophy of Nietzsche and organized around a few key concepts, that of superhuman and the Dionysian, of course, will to power. Let us add finally that of eternal recurrence, any state of the universe back periodically. Nietzsche and as Lucretius and Spinoza drew a philosophy of joy, creativity, and wholeness vile. He celebrated life and stressed that the secret of the greatest enjoyment is to live dangerously and intensely. Works by Nietzsche: The Birth of Tragedy, Human to Human, The Wanderer and His Shadow, Aurora, The Gay Science, Thus Spoke Zarathustra, Beyond Good and Evil, and the genealogy of morals or something. Go further on Nietzsche's philosophy. And I do have to admit, and this is also one of the reasons why I didn't stop reading, I didn't get anything. Nothing. So I just try really quickly to... I mean, there's going to be some YouTube videos that I'm going to watch then. I just see that there's a Wikipedia article. Nietzsche philosophy pages. Maybe this gives me this side is ugly. Beyond and good evil. I'm just gonna try. German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche shared Kierkegaard's conviction that philosophy should deeply reflect the personal concerns of individual human beings. But for Nietzsche, this entailed rejection of traditional values, including the Christian religion. Nietzsche's declaration of the death of God draws attention to our culture's general abandonment of any genuine commitment to the Christian faith. According to Nietzsche's Die Götzendämmerung, or as it is translated, Twilight of the Idols, Western philosophers since Socrates represent a degeneration of the natural strength of humanity. A noble taste for heroic style of life can only be corrupted and undermined by the interminable debates of dialectical reason. Traditional Western morality philosophy, and the Christian religion in particular, therefore opposes a healthy life, trying vainly to escape unfortunate circumstances by destroying native human desires. Only perverse tenacity and cowardice, he believed, encourages us to cling to this servile morality. It would be more brave, more honest, and much more noble to cut ourselves loose and dare to live in a world without God. In such a world, death is not to be feared, since it represents nothing more significant than the fitting conclusion of a life devoted to personal gain. All of this is, of course, a variety of nihilism. Nietzsche insists that there are no rules for human life, no absolute values, no certainties on which to rely. If truth can be achieved at all, it can come only from an individual who purposefully disregards everything that is traditionally taken to be quote-unquote important, such a superhuman person, in German Übermensch, Nietzsche supposed can live an authentic and successful human life. Beyond good and evil. Oh, Nietzsche's Beyond Morality. I'm sorry, I haven't read this up, the headline. Beyond Good and Evil. Nietzsche offered a quasi-historical account of the harmful consequences of traditional ethics in Zur Genealogie der Moral, on the genealogy of morals. From 1887, the quote-unquote good initially and probably designated only the right of those individuals with social and political power to live their lives by sheer force of will, but a priestly caste motivated by the resentment of their natural superiors generated a corrupt alternative that would appeal to the herd, quote-unquote, of less capable persons turning values inside out. In the quote-unquote slave morality endorsed by religious establishments, Nietzsche argued forceful action which should be admired gets labeled as quote-unquote evil when the cowardly tendency to think through everything in advance is transformed into the supposed virtue of prudence. Genuine autonomy, Nietzsche maintained, could only mean freedom from all external constraints one owns behavior. In this natural and admirable state of existence, each individual human being would live in a life without the artificial limits of moral obligation. No other sanction on conduct would be necessary than the natural punishment involved in the victory of a superior person over a vanquished enemy. But a wish of lesser people to secure themselves against interference from those who are better given rise to a false sense of moral responsibility. The natural fear of being overwhelmed by a superior foe becomes internalized as the self-generated sense of guilt, and individual conscience, places severe limits on the normal existence of human desire. Thus, on Nietzsche's view, the fundamental self-betrayal of the human race is to submit its freedom to the fictitious demands of an imaginary god. Afraid to live by the strength of our own wills, we invent religions as a way of generating and then explaining our perpetual sense of being downtrodden and defeated in life. I've gotten a little bit more out of that, and I am very willing to just highlight everything. Yes, and this is also going to be the end of the episode. I do hope that I've been able to just share some things that were of value, at least to you. I've gotten a little bit out of it, but I'm definitely going to watch some other YouTube videos. I do hope that there's some kind of a summary thing. I've actually wanted to do this just anyway, but then I thought, well, let's just go through it as a YouTube video and maybe I can just, I don't know, learn something as well. But yeah, unfortunately, it didn't turn out as I quite wanted it to. Anyway, I wish you the best health, of happiness, and also success, and also hope that you're going to remind yourself and you're going to be remembered, which basically means your legacy, and basically means just being a nice person and then also being remembered as a nice person, which is a pretty cool thing. On the other hand, 3 other questions that I have you are: why are you here? What are you trying to change? And what is bothering you the most? These 3 questions are hopefully going to show you your purpose and maybe even a business idea, which is a pretty cool thing. Another question that I have you is: what could you particularly say that is really going to change somebody's life? Because I totally believe from the bottom of my heart that we all can at least say something that is indeed gonna change how somebody feels about life. I believe in that. I totally do. And yeah, I have to thank you for going through this with me. I once again really hope that this episode has not been really shit. It's probably been one of the worst, at least at my point of view, in quite some time. But anyway, I wish you the best. Thank you very much. And stay generous, patient, and a nice and kind person. And I'm going to see you the next time. So, bye-bye.